on theology, but it's getting to know who the God of the Bible is. I would encourage you that next week we have a special speaker. We have Peter Warren from the Muktai people, and he'll be coming and sharing with us in the morning service, and there'll be an offering taken up during the service for his work. So please come prepared. Now, can anyone remember what we talked about last week? I know it was only 1 week, and it was an introduction, and it was about theology. I introduced you to the topic, hello, my name is God, because there are so many people that don't really know who the God of the Bible is, and that includes Christians as well. They know about him, but do they really know him? And so continuing this thought, I want to introduce, hello, my name is God, and I'm your creator this morning. And the question is, how well do we know our creator? Do we actually really believe in our creator and all that he is? Did God create everything? Or are we just living in a world that's here by random chance? Is there a God? Where did he come from? Often the questions that are asked. And the question a lot of people grapple with, does God exist? Are you positive? How can you prove it? Faith. You know, if I was an atheist, I said, yeah, that's a cop-out. But I'm not an atheist. I understand where you're coming from. But you see, the Bible, when we look at it, does not and never does it seek to prove God's existence. It simply states the fact that God is. Nothing more, nothing less. One apologist says the burden of proof is not on the Christian to prove that God does exist. The burden of proof is on the scientist who denies God and existence to prove. When a person objectively looks at the realities of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny, the only logical conclusion is that God does exist. Science points to God. But on a lighter note, I had this in my file, and I thought, yes, this will be something to think about. A scientist approaches God and says to him, God, we don't need you anymore. Science has finally figured out a way to create life out of nothing. We can now do what you did in the beginning. Oh, is that so, says God. Yes, says the scientist, we can take dirt and form it into human likeness and breathe life into it, thus creating man. Well, that's very interesting, God said. Show me. So the scientist reaches down, grabs a handful of dirt and starts to mold the soil into the shape of a man. No, 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 interrupts God. Get your own dirt. Yet when we look at the Apostles' Creed, and there are some here that learn the Apostles' Creed, what's the first statement that's mentioned? Can anyone remember? I know we're not into creeds, but some people grew up learning this. It simply says, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. That's the first statement that the Apostles' Creed makes. And that is also what they teach their children as well. So that's the first statement. And many people, I know some said to me, oh, I guess you're going to preach on Psalm 19 next week about the Creator. Sorry, but I'm not. I've gone out of the box for this one. And this one is simply taken from Job. And Job 38, verses 1 to 11. Now, it's Job 38 and 39, but I've only taken the first 11 verses. And it says, Then the Lord answered Job from the storm. He said, Who is this that makes my purpose unclear by saying things that are not true? Be strong like a man. I will ask you questions, and you must answer me. Where were you when I made the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off how big it should be? Surely you know. Who stretched a ruler across it? What were the earth's foundations set on? Or who put its cornerstone in place? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted with joy. Who shut the doors to keep the sea in when it broke through and was born? When I made the clouds like a coat for the sea and wrapped it in dark clouds? When I put limits on the sea and put its doors and bars in place? When I said to the sea, you may come this far but no further. This is where your proud waves must stop. And I thought, wow, I could preach sermons on climate control and everything else just from this, because who is it that puts the boundaries in place? Man, isn't it? We've got to do something about it. Yeah, what does God say? I put the boundaries, I set them in place, they'll not be moved. And yet, in Psalm 14:1, what does it say? I'll give you a clue. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. And so looking at these chapters, or this chapter, I've called it the challenge accepted. And God answers Job. And in our text, in chapters 38 and 39, we see God asking Job a lot of questions. Now, if you've ever read chapters 38 and 39, let me ask you, how many questions does God ask him? This will get you something to think about. He asks 59 questions of Job. And it's like bang, 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 bang. And the amazing thing is that out of those 59 questions, Job couldn't answer one of them. Not one. Now, why did God challenge Job with all these questions? I mean, after all, Job wasn't a dumbbell. He's called the wise man. And yet here is God asking him all these questions. And Job was in the situation where he was losing confidence in God. And God now is giving him a reminder of who he is. Job had gone, if you like, too far when he questioned God and accused God of not knowing what he was doing. And now it was time for God to question Job. And Job's going to find out he's not as smart as he thought he was. And God reminds him of that. And sometimes God must show us how ignorant you and I are of his power and wisdom. He brings us to the place where we're reminded of who we are to question him and what he does. And so God gives question after question to make his point. Now, Job's friend, they had given him all their advice, but they had given him the advice of a God of their own image. And today, many people are doing the same thing. They have this concept of God, of what their God is and what he's like and what he should and shouldn't do. And they presented God as some angry person who can never be satisfied and needs to be appeased. And God questioned Job was, who are you to judge me? Who made you God? And it's something we need to understand ourselves. Now, in our text in verses 1 and 2, God could have struck Job for his impudence or his assumptions, but he didn't. Instead, it says, he spoke to me. Then the Lord answered Job. He came to me in his word. In other words, God, as the creator of the universe, cared enough about Job to take the time and bring him up to speed on his misconceptions so that once again Job would have confidence in his God. The confusion answered. In our text, God asked Job a question. Who is this that makes my purpose unclear by saying things that are untrue? And this could challenge us in what we believe about God and about the different origins and where they come from. Now, you'll notice, I've put this up, you've got different belief systems. You have atheism, who very clearly says, there is no God. Then you've got agnosticism. No one can know for sure if there is a God. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I'm not sure. Or polytheism. There are many gods. Not just one, but many gods. Or pantheism. Everything is God. The chair you sit on this morning, guess what? It's God. This whole building is God. Monotheism, there is only one God. Deism, there is a God, but he has nothing to do with the world today. Now, if you looked at that, you'd be scratching your head. I didn't realize there were so many views. Yet these views do influence us in our thinking in ways we didn't dream of. And the two main worldviews are creation versus evolution. You'll notice in verse 3 of our text, God doesn't allow Job to ask his questions. He doesn't say, well, Job, hit me with it, ask your questions. He says to Job, grow up. Let me ask you some questions that you must answer. Be strong like a man. I'll ask you questions and you must answer me. So what we find here, Job is about to get a lesson about God as the creator. Why? Because his assumptions about God were not correct. He had the tendency to think that God was uncaring, that God was insensitive to his situation and his circumstances, that he didn't care about what was happening in Job's life. And so he was implying that God wasn't up to doing the job of God. Now that's a statement, isn't it? But I wonder, in our own personal relationships, have we ever thought the same thing? Have we been tempted to think, God's not interested in me. He doesn't give a hoot about what's happening to me now. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. But we tend to have the same thinking. And Job's about to get a lesson about who his God is. You see, we focus on similar things. We blame God. Do we believe that he's real, or that we simply must work things out for ourselves because often he's not there when we think he should be? And we're saying the same thing as God. Well, you've promised to protect me, you've promised to supply my every need, and yet, what's happening now? You're just not up to it, God. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this situation. Ouch. And God is saying to Job, I want you to think things through before you open your mouth to judge me. Since you are so smart, I want you to answer me. Let's just see how much you really know of me. You tried to force me to fit into your mold. So let's see just how little you know of me as your God. Now, when it comes to God as creator, we're often asking ourselves, how is he? What is he? How could it be possible? And we're influenced in our thinking by our culture and by its worldview. And if we look at those things, they're very much anti-God and designed to colour the way we look at life and our situation. Now, verse 2 of our text asks the question, who is muddying the waters? Who is responsible for creating these lies and deceptions with things that are not true? And that's a good question. And we have the thought processes called evolution. And when you actually examine evolution, there are things that are not true, but they muddy the waters with deceptions and with lies. And I remember a long time ago, you probably remember this. Remember seeing this before? Creation Ministries. We got a problem. We've got a world culture that says, lots of things. We've got creation, we've got evolution, but you'll notice on the towers there, the evolution, man decides what truth is. And so what he does is fires away at the foundation to erode the truths about creation, about being able to trust in the Bible, whereas we tend to get it wrong by looking at the issues rather than seeing what is taking place. And so the solution is we look at the foundation on which evolution is built, and we find it's very faulty. And that's where we need to focus. But the whole crux of creation versus evolution comes down to what a person is prepared to believe. And both of them take faith to believe. Now, I've looked at both sides, and I can tell you what, it takes more faith to believe in the process of evolution than it does to believe there's a creator called God who made everything. We see God, the confident assertion. In our text, God asks Job several questions, and he demands that he answer them. And first up, he says this, Job, how did I create the universe? How did I do it? Answer me if you can. How did I know what size to make the earth? How did I know what size to make the sun, the moon, and the stars? And while you're at it, how big is space? How long is time? And how did I create time? Answer me. That's in verses 4 and 5. I've simplified it for you. And Job, while you're at it, what's holding all creation together? What makes the stars stay in place? What is the beginning point and ending point of creation, Job? How many angels were in the choir rejoicing over creation on that day? Can you give me an answer? Verses 6 and 7. Oh. And Job, who determined the limits of the sea? When the waves came upon the earth and it was without form and void, and darkness moved upon the face of the deep, who separated them? Who put limits upon them? Who birthed the world into existence? Who created the land masses? Who gave birth to the continents in a world that you have yet to discover? Were you there, Job? Was it you? How did I do it, Job? Tell me if you can. Now imagine that you're Job and these things are fired at you, boom, boom, boom. Your head would be, huh? He's never thought about it. Since you can answer none of these questions, Job, this is the summary. What gives you the right to discredit or condemn me for not doing what you want me to do? Can you think what I think? Can you do what I do? Can you love as I love? I don't think so, Job. So who are you to presume to judge me, Job? Answer me if you can. And that's a challenge for us today. God has stated, I created the world and everything in it. Who is it that's muddying the waters with lies and deceptions? Why do you look at these things? I'm telling you, and that's why I've chose this passage, because it's made very plain. I created, I did it all. And it goes on in chapter 38 and 39, how he separated the light from darkness and everything in it, lightning and thunder and everything. It's there. God's point? Job, you are just a human being. And there are certain things that are beyond your understanding. Now, Job was considered a very wise man of his day. But even Job didn't understand everything about God. And the creation of God is a good example. Who can understand everything that God has set up? God is wise, and God does things that are beyond your understanding. When you look, you are left with two different theories, two prominent theories. You have the big bang of evolution where everything just happened. And it shows you the big bang. Out of that came stars and sun, an early earth, first oceans and early life. And you see up the top, 13.8, I don't know how they get that, 13.8 billion years to be precise. 13 billion years ago, 4.8 billion years, 4.5, 3.8, not known. But that doesn't matter. And yet you're challenged with God's account of creation in Genesis 1 of 6 days. Day 1, light and water. Day 2, atmosphere and sky. Day 3, dry land, plants and fruit trees. Day 4, sun, moon and stars. Day 5, flying and sea creatures. Day 6, land, animals, Adam and Eve. Which one is easier to believe? I'll let you ponder that. Who dares to question the Lord? Because when we look at creation, we stand dumbfounded at his power and wisdom, that he has made our world and everything in it. How could anyone believe that it evolved? None of us were there. The one who was there has told us that he created everything out of nothing in 6 normal days. Millions of years have not taken place. How could anyone question his wisdom and power? Even though we know he created all these things, yet how often do we challenge, why God? And God doesn't answer such questions. He doesn't say, well, look, if you think you can do a better job, you're welcome to do so. He doesn't allow us. Why? He does not allow us to play God. Instead, he silences us and reminds us we have no right to question. He is the creator and we are his creation. So after you've been bombarded with all these questions, what would you say to God? What would be your response? We see Job did have a response, and it's found in Job 42, 1 to 5. He says, then Job answered the Lord, I know that you can do all things and that no plan of yours can be ruined. You ask, who is this that made my purpose unclear by saying things that are not true? You notice what he says? Surely I spoke of things I did not understand. I talked of things too wonderful for me to know. You said, listen now, and I will speak. I will ask you questions. You must answer me. My ears have heard of you before, but what does it say? Now my eyes have seen you. His confidence is restored in the Creator. And that confirmation is acknowledged. And when I thought of this, I said, the burden of proof, is it on the Christian to prove that God exists? No, it's not. Now, God never anywhere in his word, never goes into detail about how he came into being. It never shows anything about that. It doesn't talk about it. It just states, in the beginning, what? God. In the beginning. And I came across this thing that I smiled to myself, because it's interesting how the world changes it around. How would an atheist approach this? And I found it. This is what an atheist says. I'm an atheist. I'm not an atheist because it's cool. I'm not an atheist because of religious extremism or oppression in some depraved corners of the world. I'm not an atheist because I don't think evil can exist in a world with a God. I'm not an atheist because I think science can disprove God. I'm an atheist because of one simple fact. I feel sorry. The burden of proof lies on what? Religion. If you propose the existence of something, you must follow the scientific method in your defense of its existence. Otherwise, I have no reason to listen to you. What is he actually saying? He's saying science has proved God doesn't exist. Use the scientific method. But if you apply it to the same rule of thumb, he cannot do it either. So the burden of proof is not on a Christian to prove God's existence. It's on those who deny his existence. And that's what they do. And theologians tell us there are many reasons why we can believe in God. And I'm going to summarize these, because I could do a sermon on each one of them, but you can go and research yourself. And they give us some reasons to believe in God. Now, the first one is what they call the teleological argument. And the premise is everything that has a design has a designer. The universe has a highly complex design. The conclusion is the universe has a designer. Now that's summarizing it. It's basically saying that if you looked at the world and everything in it, you must come to the conclusion it just didn't happen as a boom. There was some careful thought and planning that points to a creator. The same as this pulpit. I just didn't think, I need a new pulpit. And it just happened to turn up that way. No, what it shows is someone carefully designed it and put it together. And it has form, it has function. It points that someone designed it and made it. It didn't come out of nothing. And that's the idea of the teleological argument. It implies there's a designer. Now, I'm not trying to bombard you, I'm just summarizing. If you do theology ever, as Joe will tell you, it can be pretty intense when you're starting to think about these things. But the ontological argument, and this is the simplest definition that I could bring. Ontosis in the Greek is a participle referring to the verb to be, to being of God. And the very fact that man can conceive of God in terms that are truly God's character indicates he exists. So basically saying God is by definition perfect. Existence is a perfection. Therefore, God exists. Now, there's a lot more in it, but as I said, I'm not going into it. I'm just giving you the arguments. Then there's the moral argument for the existence of God. If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Objective moral values and duties do exist, therefore, God does exist. What it means is, do we know what's right and wrong? Do we? Based on what? What's it based on? It's based on a standard. Where did that standard come from? Who determined what that standard would be? And that standard points to the existence of the Creator, someone who made it. So if I want a standard, there is a standard, and we often call that the Ten Commandments. That's the standard that we're to live by. Who set that standard? Did man? What tells us what's right or wrong? God does. Then we have another one. Cosmological argument is an argument which says that God has to exist because the world exists. The world couldn't exist without God because He created. The argument is based on cause and effect. So there are only two views of the universe. Either God did it or He didn't. That's the only two possible views. We look at it and we say somebody made it. And as we define the world, we learn more about the one who made it. All we need to do is look at what we have in the world, and look very carefully, and you'll find it substantiates that God is. As one commentator points out, but who is He? Who is this God? And very clearly, God is not an it, it's not a thing, it's not a force, He's a person. And God is a person. And one of the reasons we believe that is because personality must come from personality. And we are persons. We have all these personal things that made us people, and they must have come from a source that is equally person. We know God is personal from the Bible because it says He is a person, because He uses personal titles to describe Him. He is given personal names. He is called a father. He is called a shepherd. He is called a friend. He's called a counselor. The terms that are used to identify God identify Him as a person, not an object, not a thing. But also, personal pronouns are used. The Hebrew and the Greek always refer to God as He, never it. He is a person. He is a person because He thinks, He acts, He feels, and He speaks. He communicates. All of those are the characteristics of what we have as people. All the evidence of Scripture indicates that He is a person. All the evidence of creation and our personhood indicates we came from such a person. And someone asked me to explain then, and maybe you could do it for me. Who created God? Who created Him? But hang on. If God created everything, then somebody had to create Him. He had to come from somewhere, didn't He? That's the argument. And one old-time commentator that I found gave me some information. Because we say, no one created God. God always was, always will be. But God did not come from anywhere. God was not created. He did not just come into existence out of nothing. Biblically speaking, God always existed. God is beyond time. He did not come into existence at some point within time. Instead, he claims that rather than having a beginning, he's the beginning and the end. He's the Alpha and Omega. Now, considering this, who created God, or where did God come from? It's an illogical question. God didn't come from anywhere or anyone. God is the source of everything, and he created time. And he says time is not absolute. God is absolute. When someone asks where God came from or who created him, they are assuming time is absolute, and God isn't. But that isn't the God of the Bible. Now apply this to God. God created time. Yet people ask who created God? Where did God come from? They are assuming that God is bound by time when asking this question. In other words, they believe that time was first and then God came onto the scene. Yet from the Bible we learn that time had a beginning in Genesis 1. That it was started by God, so God is not bound by time. When it comes to the issue of who created God or where did he come from, these are illogical questions that assume that God is bound to or was created within his creation. This is not the God of the Bible, who is beyond time and beyond his creation. He's not limited to it. He is the uncreated creator of all existence, and existence is not possible without him. So by the word of God itself, we can know that God exists, and those who deny such things are really suppressing that knowledge, all the while borrowing from the truth of the Bible to deny and argue against God and his word. God is and always has been and always will be. He's not created. He created all things. Now, what is the reality of God being my creator? What difference does it make? Is it that important? And I ask that question because I run into Christians who tell me it's not important, Pastor. It's not an issue. What's the reality of God being my creator, the God of the Bible? Does it make any difference to me? He's our Father. But it does. Once again, I've borrowed this because the Bible gives us a very particular viewpoint. In creation, God created me, and in Adam is my past. Absolutes from God, in other words, God sets the rules. God has a standard. And if God has a standard, what does that mean? It means that as a human being, if God created me and he sets the rules, I'm accountable to who? To God. If I believe God is my creator and he sets the rules and he's made me and he knows what he's doing, then I am accountable to him. And he has given me a record of what happened in the past, Genesis 1, all the way through to what will happen in the future, in Revelation. He wants a personal relationship with you and with me, one-on-one. Now, what about if God doesn't exist? Then where did I come from? In this little diagram, I either came from ape, but before I became from ape, I came from pond scum, and I've developed into this magnificent person with all the intelligence that's still evolving. I'm not perfect yet, but hey, the world's my oyster. I can be anything and everything. It means relative morality. It means if there is no God, I set the rules. You can't tell me, you have no right to tell me how to live and what to do. Because there is no God, there is no standards. Only what I say is true. And I can live without fear or consequences because there are no consequences, because there is no God. So like Job, you and I can have the confidence that we have a Creator who made everything in this world. We can have the confidence that God is a person who knows me and wants me to know Him. The question is this morning, do I really want to know Him? Or am I happy to live as though He doesn't exist? That I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, because I'm the boss. Something to think about. Hello, my name is God. I'm your Creator. And if I'm your Creator, you're accountable to me for how you live, what you do with your neighbour, and how you live your life before me. Or I don't exist, so do whatever you want. That's the choices. Which one are you going to believe as the team comes?
Plenty to mull over there, isn't there? We're going to sing Faithful One, So Unchanging, Ageless One, the Rock of Peace. And on that last graphic, that was very clear there, that God is reliable because of His unchanging quality. He's beyond time, He's ageless, and yet everything that we know and understand is within this bubble of time, isn't it? So let's focus on the faithful one, so unchanging, as we sing this